And what I want to talk to you about is how digital process automation is scaled by great enduring organizations. Any organization can do an innovation and technology project here and there and automate successfully parts of their business. But how do great enduring organizations do that systematically, not over a period of 1 or 2 years, but over a decade or more? What are the secrets for sustainable improvement and innovation and scalability of digital process automations in those organizations? So I'm going to switch hats to my innovation hat, if you will. And we're going to be talking about how these organizations achieve that status. I want to do a bit of a disclaimer up front that some of this information may be a little confusing. Some of the things that I'm going to talk about may sound a little contradictory. And so is the world of greatness. The world of greatness is not an or world, is an and world, and it's filled with contradictions, forces that pull in very different directions that you're going to see when we go into the fundamentals of these organizations. So I will share my presentation with you right now, and we'll get started here. So making sure everybody can see my slides, which looks good. And I want to make sure now that let's work together on this journey. And I have a big disclaimer up front, which is these are not theories of my own. I am not a visionary who can predict the future. As a matter of fact, there are only 2 types of people who predict the future: those who don't know and those who don't know that they don't know. And so you have to choose which one you are. I cannot predict the future. What I can tell you is that through empiricism, over a long period of time, we can see what doesn't work and we let go of that. And we can see what works, and then we try to understand why it works. And once we understand why it works, we can scale that. That's one big lesson here. Great organizations and leaders, they are not necessarily visionary. What they are is that they are highly empirical. They experiment constantly and they find what works, and then they scale what works once they understand the underlying mechanisms for that. Now, the lessons that I'm going to share with come from hundreds of organizations. I have had the privilege of personally training more than 30,000 excellence and innovation leaders who work in all industries and over 100 organizations all over the world. Now, not every one of these organizations is a great enduring organization by any means, but they have pockets of excellence in certain cases, and certainly we have many of the lessons that I'm going to share with you derived from the best practices in several of these organizations. Now, I pose to you up front a question, and you don't have to answer to me, answer to yourself. If you think about sustainable greatness, organizations that do digital process automation and scale digital process automation and technology for value creation, and they become dominant in their industry. And value creation here can be financial value creation and or social value creation if you're operating in a nonprofit environment. Now, the question is, those organizations, when you look under the hood, what do you think matters most in their successful journey? Do you think it's about ideas? Do you think it's about the methods that they use? Do you think it's about the exponential technologies that they adapt and they leverage on an ongoing basis? Or do you think it's about their people, that they have this special people in those organizations that are just different from everybody else that you know? Well, let's talk about that. I will tell you, hear me saying that it's about ideas, because ideas are very important. New ideas are fundamental for accelerating innovation. But I will also say that ideas are everywhere. What are uncommon are people willing to put their reputation behind ideas. You're going to hear me talk about methods, the importance of a disciplined framework for the execution of our priorities. You're going to hear me saying that I've been a certified Lean Six Sigma Master Black Belt for more than 2 decades. But for most people, that sounds like a dangerous mental condition. So methods are important, But methods do not transform businesses. People do. Okay, so it must be technologies, right? Right, José? Because after all, we live in a world of exponential technologies. Never in human history we had so many technologies develop exponentially concurrently. Technologies are wonderful because technologies can enable your processes to be better, faster, cheaper, higher quality, greater safety. And those technologies are wonderful, but technologies can also make stupid happen at the speed of light. So it must be people then. It must be people because after all, people are our most important asset. Well, that sounds good, but why is that when I encounter large mergers and acquisitions and evaluations of assets are taking place, the people are often the first to go? So there is a disconnect. So this is not about idealism, it's about empiricism. And what we find from an empirical standpoint is that from a human level, all people matter. From the level of excellence and innovation acceleration in these great enduring organizations, they have a disproportional focus on identifying the right people. The right people in the organization are the amplifiers of the values of the organization, of the purpose of the organization, of the culture of the organization, and the behaviors that demonstrate that culture in that organization. Those people play a disproportional role. So as you can see and hear from my descriptions, the world of greatness is filled with contradictions, forces that pull in very different directions. And in the world of mediocrity, people and organizations spend endless hours trying to choose between option A or option B. But the world of greatness requires the intelligent blending of options A and B. And often they are they have counter forces acting on the system. And there is no bigger forces pulling in different directions than the forces of excellence and innovation, which are fundamental ingredients in great enduring organizations. However, most organizations, they either live on one sphere of attaining excellence by setting high performance standards and meeting and exceeding those performance standards, which sounds wonderful, but if you only do that, you eventually become obsolete. And then the flip side of that is the force of innovation that looks at excellence and says, hey, that is interesting, but I don't get to design cars by squeezing efficiencies out of horses. So there's got to be a different perspective, a different approach, and that's very enticing, that's very seductive. And you have a tendency to think that the most innovative organizations must be the great enduring organizations of our time. But the problem is that they're not, because the most innovative organizations, they tend to fall in love with innovation and they tend to fall in love with technology. They continuously innovate and they lose track of their purpose. They are not consistent with their purpose over time, and they scatter, a flash in the pan that disappears, and then we don't remember what they are used to be called anymore. So great enduring organizations do not choose between excellence or innovation. They know that to achieve enduring greatness, they must have an intelligent blend of excellence and innovation. By all means, you must optimize where you currently have. You must increase efficiency. You must increase productivity. You must squeeze efficiencies out of those horses. Yes, but that's not enough. You must also develop the discipline to step away from the excellence that you have created and ask the question, there's got to be a better way. Not a 5 or 10% incremental way, but a 5 or 10-fold better way that looks at the problem from a different perspective. And here's the key. Once you find a different perspective, you don't become dominant by just continuously innovating on that perspective. You become dominant by scaling the innovation that you have created better than others can. And you know how you scale innovation? You scale innovation by applying the principles of excellence to the innovation that you have created. So although excellence and innovation have a bit of a disdain for each other, culturally, they have a hard time coexisting. In great enduring organizations, you find just the right level of friction between the two and the right concepts and fundamentals applied to them. Now, I want you to keep this at the background because I'm going to get more practical with you now. Now, I mentioned early on the organizations that I have been incredibly uh, fortunate to collaborate with, to solve problems, to do innovations with, to train emerging and senior leaders on these concepts and principles. But that's interesting because I'm playing an advisory role. It's different when I have to live with all the consequences of my advice. And in these organizations that I want to highlight to you very briefly here, I had to lead from within. I was a corporate leader for these organizations. I started my career at Sony as a design and process engineer. I was over the moon by working with the leading technology company of its time when I started my career. And the lessons there that I want to share with you is simple. In my first week of work, I was expected to identify 100 innovations. And I thought that my boss had lost his mind because there's no way I can do that. So the lesson is the following. When it comes to real innovation and innovation in your organization, innovation, it doesn't matter what your gender, ethnicity, race, academic background, or how many I love myself certificates you have. When it comes to real innovation, there is only one way to find the real innovators in your organization, and that is through the test of innovation execution. Your job is to create a meritocracy of ideas with clear execution mechanisms, empower those in the organization to use that system to identify, prioritize, and execute on what creates value for the organization. This is easier to say than it is to do. A meritocracy of ideas with clear execution mechanisms. And what you're going to find out is that the special people in your organization, the ones who actually do it instead of talking about it, they will have 4 personal traits that will emerge. And you see that as the outcome of their successful projects. And the traits are, they have high levels of purpose alignment between their work and their purpose in their life. They have tremendous passion for what they do. They have high levels of discipline and high levels of resilience. Purpose, passion, discipline, and resilience are the secret ingredients and key ingredients for successful innovators. That's the lesson there. I left Sony to be in a startup company in California that changed the world. In a period of few years, we created a new technology for semiconductor manufacturing that revolutionized Moore's law in the semiconductor industry, and to this day is a base technology that image smaller and smaller circuits that give us all greater and greater computing capacity. This company is called Cymer ASML, and the lesson that I want to share with you there is the following. We had the best scientists from all over the world in this one company, and we could not move forward. Why? Because we did not have a common purpose with clear collaborative leadership development in that organization. We had too many smart people trying to prove each other wrong. Until we develop a common purpose and collaborative leadership skills, and I cannot emphasize that enough, that we could move towards that common purpose, and then we could become dominant. And lastly, the lesson is simple. What do you learn in an organization with 350,000 employees and more than 585 business units around the world? What you learn is that every organization has culture and subcultures, and you must be empathetic to it. You must seek to understand it and meet it where it's at. Because if you don't, you're going to suffer the consequences. Because if culture eats strategy for breakfast, excellence and innovation in any of the digital process automation initiatives that you have will become side dishes in the jaws of culture that will eat it up and spit it out. So meet organizations where they're at. Do not fantasize about where they should be at. Meet where they're at and bring them along. When I moved to a 100-year-old plus global engineering, construction, infrastructure company with more than 12,000 pure engineers designing some of the best energy, water, telecommunications infrastructure projects around the world. The challenge is, how do you move a culture that has been successful for 100 years to a new level of performance where they are accelerating innovation for value creation? And here's what we did. So I like to show data behind my discussions about these topics. So what we did for 6 years is that we focused on what everybody else did, which was focus on ideas and discipline methods for improvement and innovation in this organization. Engage your audience. We did all of that. It was wonderful. For 6 years, we had increasing financially validated benefits in the organization, increasing engagement from professionals in the organization. But at year 6, as the leader for that program, I thought, we're doing all the things right by the book. We're implementing Lean and Six Sigma and business process management and even innovation. But I feel that we have not tapped on the full power of this organization. We have 12,000 professionals here. Right now, we have 500 who are actively engaged on this. So what we did is that we flipped this concepts of focusing on ideas and methods and say they matter, they are important, but we need to be bold. We need to achieve greater results and greater engagement and satisfaction in the work that we do. Oh, and by the way, let me preface this by saying that we should be very proud of getting to year 6, because most of the organizations that you're talking about this, improvements and innovations and digital process automation today, 50% of them will be gone in the next 3 years. And I don't mean the organization, I mean the program that they have within the organization disappears, dies a slow death. 99% of them will not be talked about after 5 years. So we had made to year 6. We're part of the 1% club. So what did we do? What did we do at that time? Should we just maintain it? Should we just keep it going? No, we dare to be bold. We dare to go back to the key fundamentals and say, hey, we know it's not about ideas. We know it's not about methods, the two things that we're focusing on. We know it's not even about the exponential technologies because they come and go very fast these days. So we know it's about people, but that sounds like an HR cliche. I want something more meaningful, something more substantive. What are we going to do with our people? What we're going to do is that we're going to empower them to achieve greatness through the work that they do in a meritocracy of ideas with clear execution mechanisms. When I presented that to the CEO of my company, I remember him looking at me and say, why are you doing that? Because we're doing so well. I mean, Lean and Six Sigma and BPM and all those things we're doing are getting good results. Isn't this going to be too abrupt for the organization? And I asked my CEO if he would allow me to experiment for 1 or 2 years. And he did. Power to him for allowing me to do that. I was always grateful for that. Because what we saw is that we flipped from the ideas and methods to this focus on finding the right people. The right people are people with purpose, passion, discipline, and resilience in our organization. And you only find those people through the test of execution. So we set it up and we let it happen. And what we saw was transformative. We had an 8-fold improvement in value creation and more than a 10-fold improvement in voluntary engagement in our organization. More than 5,000 professionals on a voluntary basis around the world identifying, prioritizing, and creating improvements and innovations that create real value for the organizations. Transformative. We not only use this within our organization, we provided services related to this transformation because we won multiple global awards on business transformation, and we provided services to more than 100 organizations in all business models in more than 20 countries around the world. When I felt that my journey there was completed, my next challenge was to do the same in a Fortune 100 energy organization. This organization wanted to go for extraordinary, but the reality is that we're anything but extraordinary. They were very ordinary. In 2010, after the 2008 financial crisis, this organization was on the brink of bankruptcy. And you're talking about becoming extraordinary? Just need to survive. But with a leader that had a clear purpose, strong set of core values, brought the values of excellence, of innovation, of entrepreneurship and intrapreneurship into the organization. We had no specific competitive advantage here from technology, from market segments, from geographies. We wanted to use our culture as a competitive advantage. That takes time. That takes you to be chronically consistent with your purpose, which is the signature of being extraordinary. Developing discipline, which is being chronically consistent with your purpose around the right set of values. So what we did, we implemented a meritocracy of ideas with clear execution mechanisms. And over a period of 8 years, from 2010 to 2018, we were fanatically disciplined about establishing a meritocracy of ideas with clear execution mechanisms. We empower and equipped our professionals with collaborative leadership skills and innovation execution skills. And they engage into this system to identify, prioritize, and create the most value in the shortest time and simplest means, no matter where they were in the organization. By 2018, we were identifying, prioritizing, and completing, implementing over 2,000 innovations on an annual basis. Hundreds of those related to digital process automation. Financially validated benefits of greater than $1 billion in EBITDA on an annual basis. And the mediocre $2 billion business, 8 years later, was valued at $35 billion as a public company. It requires chronic consistency with your purpose, clear fundamentals over a long period of time, and requires us to unleash the power of our people to go for extraordinary. Because once they see the path and you have clear meritocracy of ideas with clear execution mechanisms and you stand with them, not over them, they will join you on this journey. Now, I want to get more tactical with you now because this sounds inspirational, this sounds high level. The results are there and they're undeniable. Now let's get under the hood and specifically with the framework and the point of view from digital process automation. I want to get focused on the fundamentals. And the fundamentals for successful digital process automation and the scalability of the technologies and value creation rests on intelligent business process management. I'm going to go brief on this. You can look at the slides when you play the recording again later on. But I want to frame intelligent business process management as this intelligent blend of stewardship with the wisdom of the organization and proven methods to identify, prioritize, and implement significant value creation business process designs, improvements, and innovations. Now, there is a maturity level here that several of you know about. It follows IT maturity levels, but precedes that for sure. And you can have different classifications, but generally speaking, your business process will go from being recognized that they exist, being identified, being defined, all the way to being managed and being optimized. Now, there is a certain level of maturity that's needed depending on the criticality of the process that you have in the organization. Also keep in mind that your intelligent business process management system will have different levels of innovation that's going to be applied to it. And those levels of innovation depend on the type of innovation that you're doing. Is it innovation at the core? Is it innovation at adjacencies? Or is it truly a new business model and it's disruptive in its nature? So typically what you see here are the percentages on the most innovative organizations that scale innovation for value creation and scale technology better than their peers. This is just overall with all industries distribution. Now, so what are the pillars for success for this intelligent business process management value creation? And there are three main pillars that I want to share with you. The first one is governance. You must have governance. You must have defined roles and structure for IBPM value creation. Now, the methods are important. They do not transform businesses. People do, but they matter. You have to have proven methodologies and you have to have clear execution mechanisms for innovation execution in your organization. You develop this common language that people understand that they follow. Now, the specific method is less important. Oh, I want to use Lean. I want to use Agile. I want to use Six Sigma. I want to use EDCAR, ProSci. You choose what method you want. It's more important that you develop the common language and that you're consistent with that proven methodology. And now the third pillar is probably along with governance, is probably the most fundamental pillars. It's collaborative leadership. And collaborative leadership is skill development for all professionals on collaborative innovation for value creation. We had a wonderful discussion from the SAP leader today on the collaborative decision making, and a lot of that is built into this. Collaborative leadership has a specific set of tools and techniques and methods for its effectiveness to play. Now, I'll talk on this briefly on each one of them. From a governance perspective, what we see in great enduring organizations is very simple. They have a summary of roles. This can be often, most of them are part-time roles. They're assignments on people who have existing roles, and they have assignments on the governance related to excellence and innovation for their organizations. And it's built on business and process ownership that's clearly identified in the organization, a set of development of entrepreneurs and collaborative leaders who are the leaders for improvements and innovations and digital process automation in these organizations, a level of more specialized professionals and leaders who provide business and project coaching to the teams, and over that, hierarchical leaders, business and project champions who provide directional guidance to the teams as they navigate strategy, as they navigate politics in every organization. And above it all, a steering committee that supports, that provides resources as needed for the successful growth of this program and this value creation for the organization. So if you do not have governance in your organization, your digital process automation efforts will always be scattered. There will always be point opportunities. They'll never truly scale, and you have to remember that. This structure provides the building blocks to achieve disciplined IBPM value creation. Now, what about the methods, Jose? You talked about the methods. We don't have time to talk about every single method that organizations use, so let me talk about the 4 most common methods that we see. And I show them here as a rope because the analogy is that none of them by themselves make it great. It's the intelligent blending of these methods that make it great. And it's all about discipline execution. You must understand innovation. You must understand innovation methods, because today's innovation is no longer an escape from disciplined thinking. Innovation is escape with disciplined thinking. We can learn to think different. We can learn to purposefully innovate, and we can learn to simplify with innovation. We also use the architecture of business process management and intelligent business process management, where you have at its core end-to-end process understanding and ownership. This sounds like common sense, but common sense is the least common of the senses in large organizations. People move fast, often in a horizontal line when there's no progress. They zigzag on a flat line. For you to make progress in the right direction, you must have understanding of what's critical in your business and how those processes are defined end to end and how they're owned. And then you look at more efficiency approaches, if you will, once you have those processes defined. You can talk about lean, which is about increasing speed, eliminating waste, facilitating the flow of value to your customer. And you can look at from a Six Sigma perspective to reduce variation on the outputs to your customer, because your customers do not feel the average of your processes. They feel their individual experiences. They feel the variation of your process. Now, all of this separately are effective, but when they're combined, they're exceptional. But remember, it's not about the methods, because the methods alone do not transform businesses. Collaborative value creation leaders in your organization do. Those are the ones that you want to find. The methods is just a framework for discipline execution that these amazing people in your organization will leverage. But it's not about becoming an expert on a method. It's about becoming an expert on collaborative leadership and value creation. And these are not the same things. So in most organizations, when you look at their maturity level when it comes to innovation for value creation, at the lowest level with multi-million-dollar organizations, you have a single entrepreneur in a small company that can build millions of values in new wealth creation. That individual is typically brilliant, has passion, has discipline, has resilience to see his or her business through. But if you want to become a multi-billion-dollar corporation, that's not enough. You now need to scale the systems. You need to create systems and mechanisms that are scalable. You need to have clear governance. You need to have clear structures and roles for improvement and innovation and digital process automation. You must have your growth and technology accelerators on the side, which are experimenting with bullets constantly to see what works and why it works, and then using the systems to scale what works. And ultimately, when you look at the multi-trillion-dollar organizations of our time and into the future, they do all of that, but they do more. And what they have is that they have developed those systems and mechanisms. They have plenty of individual brilliance, but they also have democratized collaborative leadership and innovation acceleration skills development, broadly applied in the organizations. And these organizations, they are built on a clear purpose. And this clear purpose is fueled by a culture with a strong set of core values that is aligned with that purpose. And these organizations are chronically consistent with their purpose, which is the ultimate level of discipline. This is incredibly hard to do. That's why most organizations will never be multi-trillion-dollar organizations. So with this, let's look at an example, and I'm going to guide you through. We're not going to have Q&A in this session. I'm going to guide you through the end, and then when we're at the end done with our time here, I'll take questions on LinkedIn later on. Now, collaboration, innovation, and value creation are the ultimate measurements of IBPM effectiveness. Wonderful. So let's look at some details, José. Can you show me what it looks like in some organization that you actually implemented this? So let's take a look. I'm looking at an global infrastructure company here, and they have a history. It's not that you go into a company and they haven't never innovated before. If they have never innovated before, they wouldn't exist. Of course, they do lots of innovations. But by the year 2000, they had this high performance teams. They hire consultants to do this process mapping on everything because they wanted to automate the processes. So they wanted to do it right, and they were told to do it right, you got to do process mapping. They had hundreds and hundreds of process maps, if not thousands, because their businesses are incredibly complex. You know what the benefit was? Zero. You know what the implementation was? Less than 10%. Why? Because people were overwhelmed by complexity. They didn't know what to do with it. So they followed that up by implementing a Lean Six Sigma program. And on their Lean Six Sigma program, they had a combination of green belt driven projects, and they got some good results as a result of that. They got 70% implementation of those projects that they identified, and they were moving in the right direction. But they realized there was something fundamental missing in their business. And what was missing to get to the next level was process ownership. To have sustainable solutions implement and implementation, you need to have ownership of the processes they are trying to impact. The best technologies will not solve process ownership issues. Once we instituted global process ownership for the critical processes, they had over 99% implementation rate over a period of 10 years, and they more than quadruple the benefits they had from before. So notice that this is both an evolution and a revolution, which is typically how great enduring organizations get there. They look at their processes at the highest level, and they identify what are their critical business processes, what are their supporting processes, and then the other executive leadership processes that they had. This is a very important exercise that your senior leadership needs to engage on to decide what creates value for our customers and what are the processes that drive that value to that customer. These are your key core client facing processes, your key value chain processes. This is not an easy discussion, and there will be many opinions about what is core, what's supporting in our organizations. It's a decision that the leadership must make ultimately, because the next step is to focus on what? Is to focus your digital process automation and your improvements and innovations on what matters most to the clients of the organization and the organization itself, which are the processes in that case highlighted in green. Now, once we get to that point, we need to understand the culture of the organization and where this organization is at as we go into this journey. This is not a process-driven organization. This is a project-driven organization that does this amazing billion-dollar projects around the world. So how they're going to apply these concepts? If you just come up with digital process automation in a company that does projects, you're going to fail. You need to seek to understand how they operate and understand how you're going to apply the methods in their context. And what we discover is that, of course, the project teams receive and apply process knowledge. Now, how do process owners fit into that? Well, these process owners, they look at processes not on a single project, they are looking at processes across multiple projects with different geographies, with different technology types, with different client types. Now, these process owners, they have a different set of responsibilities from the project team leaders and the project teams themselves. So the process owners, they develop and communicate the process knowledge that's then communicated to the project teams. Now, this interface is what we call intelligent business process management. Is this process excellence that exists to serve the execution excellence that we want to have with our customers. So it's important that we understand how methods apply to the context and the culture of our organizations. And in a project-driven organization, this is the application. It could be dramatically different if you have a product-driven organization. Now, in this world filled with complexity, how do we get through all of this? How do we adjust? So this concept of innovation for simplification is fundamental for great enduring organizations, and I want to spend a little time with you on that. Innovation for simplification is, the concept is simple. We live in a very complex world, and when people ask us to do things, we start thinking, oh my goodness, what else do I have to do? I have to add things to the system. What else that I'm gonna have to do here? So when you wonder what needs to be added, you're not applying innovation for simplification, because innovation for simplification has to be a reminder to you that you can only achieve perfection when there's nothing left to take out. You don't get to achieve perfection by adding things to systems. Perfection is only attained when there's nothing left to take out, when you have the essence of what matters. So keep in mind that before you ever try to automate anything, please remember that automation is the last of three things that you should be considering. The first few things that you should be considering is that how I'm going to design processes that are going to eliminate what doesn't need to be done. How I'm going to design processes that are going to reduce the complexity and reduce these non-value added activities that exist. Maybe I cannot eliminate them, but I can reduce them. And only after you eliminate, only after you reduce, you're going to consider automation. Cannot tell you how many people, including in this audience, jump to automation right away on everything because it's seductive, it's tempting, it's a new technology, it's going to solve our problems. Technologies are like romantic lovers. They solve one problem in the short run, they create 10 new ones in the long run. You have to choose them very carefully. So great enduring organizations are chronically disciplined about not just using technology. They will eliminate, they will reduce, and then they will automate. I want to give you a practical example. Multi-billion-dollar infrastructure company designing power plants all over the world. Each one of these power plants is about $1 billion. It takes anywhere between 3 and 5 years to fully design and build this very complex power plants. So one of the functions that were identified on the design and building of these power plants is that we have to do 100 different types of unique and complex valve control stations for every one of these power plants. Think about that. There are hundreds of these valve stations across this complex that is the size of 20 football fields. It's a city. And in that, you have all these different control valve stations. And when we got the team together, we identified 120 different ones. Well, what did they want to do? Initially, what they did is what most people are tempted by. Oh, there's this new technology that allows us to do easy automation. So let's have IT involved and let's automate this process. Wonderful. So they got together and they did some process mapping and they got the basic flow of the process documented, and they went on to automate the process flow. 3 years later, the automation was not done. Pushbacks from all different places in the organization because they said, this is not right. It's not working for me. It's not working for her. So it's not ready yet. 3 years later, automation wasn't ready. And even if it was ready, it wasn't ready because there was pushback. IT thought it was ready after 12 months, but nobody would use it because it didn't satisfy their needs. So remember, do not just automate complex processes. Think about how you're going to eliminate it. Think about how you're going to reduce it. And we did that. So what we did, we got everybody together around the table and said, hey, we have 120 different designs going on here. Can we standardize this design? And people said, no, 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 no. My design is unique. There's no way we can standardize that. After 3 weeks of discussions and collaborative leadership, we got the group of chief engineers to agree on the standardization, but typically was my standardization. Well, that wasn't helpful. Everybody agrees on standardizing, but it's their way. And there were 6 different people with 6 different opinions. So through collaborative leadership, we say, okay, what if we create 6 standards that we can use? And by creating those 6 standards now, not 1, but 6 separate standards, we can reduce the number of valve station designs. They were skeptical about it, but by creating the 6 standards, we're able to eliminate all of those steps because they're built into the standard, into 1 out of 6 standards. And by building those 6 standards now, we have a process where we eliminated and reduced complexity on it. And you have this process now that satisfies all 6 standards. This process is 20 times faster than the previous one. Now, this process, not with 1 design, but with 6 designs, was able to be automated. Those 6 base designs were able to be automated in 3 months. And they became an application, a module in an application called Plant Vision. And now I could drop 1 out of 6 options in there and allow people to customize the final design. And even with the post-production customization of those 6 blocks, we could do it 20 times faster. So remember, eliminate, reduce, and then you think about automation. So if we go back to the basics, what matters most? Ideas, methods, technologies, or people? It is people. It is people who are leveraging a meritocracy of ideas with clear execution mechanisms and they are creating value for the organization. They are the amplifiers of automation. They are the amplifiers of value creation. They are entrepreneurs and intrapreneurs in your organization. And these people, you find out that they have purpose, passion, discipline, and resilience. So how do you find these people? They are in your organization right now. They are sitting there with a whole bunch of other sour-faced people who are just kind of doing their jobs, but they have something different about them. And your job as a leader is to inspire them to achieve greater things, to inspire them to align their personal purpose with the purpose of the organization to create value. And you're going to inspire them further by saying that we're going to equip you with the ability to take different perspectives at a problem. And we're going to create mechanisms here and a bit of a safety net for you to experiment, for you to take some risks that before you couldn't take. We're not going to eliminate risks for you completely. You still must have courage, and we're looking for people with courage. But we're going to help you manage and mitigate risks and experiment in small ways and find out what can be scalable in our organization. I'm looking for collaborative leaders with courage, with purpose, with passion, with discipline and resilience. And our jobs as leaders is to create an environment in our organizations where these great people and their great ideas can connect. And when you get to that point, now you're looking at a decade, 2 decades long growth in innovation for value creation, in the process automation that will scale the right technologies and value creation for your organization. Because remember, ladies and gentlemen, none of us has a crystal ball. We cannot predict the future. The best way to predict the future is to create it. And your ultimate competitive advantage to create the future is to build a culture where excellence and innovation provides you with the ultimate competitive advantage. This is not going to change in the decades ahead, perhaps not in the centuries ahead. So join us in the journey for excellence and innovation acceleration, for culture, business, and digital transformation. You can join me on my journey. I'll be doing this until the day I die or become mentally or physically incapacitated. So this is how you get hold of me, how we contribute to this journey. All of you who are here are already great contributors, and I feel blessed to have you in that journey with me, and we'll continue to carry on. So thank you, everybody. I'm gonna wrap up this presentation, and I'm gonna change hats to the conference hat here, and I'm gonna give you a quick few reminders before we depart for our days. First of all, we have to say thanks to the incredible speakers we had. These are great. We don't bring theoretical leaders here. We bring practical leaders who are implementing what they talk about in their organizations. These people are incredibly busy. They are responsible often for multi-billion-dollar organizations, and they are taking the time to be here and share their wisdom and expertise with you. So thank you for all the speakers for doing a fantastic job over 12 amazing sessions for our global community. I have to thank Brian Reffel, who is our conference director and the brains and the muscles behind all of this. There are 1,000 moving pieces. There are lots of things that could go wrong. And largely, you don't see any of that because Brian makes sure it works. It's excellence at its greatest level with lots of great innovation built in by Brian and the team. So very thankful for that. Very thankful for Vijay Bajaj, the man behind the scenes, the CEO of Proqis Digital, who creates this platform that when a pandemic happened, had a vision to create platforms to allow a global community to benefit from this tremendous expertise and practical knowledge so that they can improve their careers, they can improve their organizations. Thank you, Vijay, for your vision. Thank you for your leadership. Also, we have to thank our sponsors, Abby, Camunda, and Signavio, for bringing this world-class virtual events to a global conference at no cost. And we can only do that because of the sponsorship of Abby, Camunda, and Signavio. Thank you very much for all that you do. Now, our next conference will be the BTOES RPA, Robotics Process Automation, and Intelligent Automation live event. That will take place June 15th through June 17th. Please make sure that you register for that, okay? You are not automatically registered if you're participating in this conference. There will be announcements and there will be links provided. Throughout this conference, we already provided those links. If you search BTOES, RPA, and Intelligent Automation, you'll find the page as well. You can sign up, free registration because of our great sponsors. You can sign up for that. You can let others know. We have a limit on the maximum number of participants for free, and I think it's around 3,000 participants. So make sure you sign up early and you register so that you have all the benefits of being a registered participant, including that you should be receiving in the next week or so a link and an email with a link and password to access all of the session recordings from this conference. So again, reminder, June 15th through June 17th, we're going to be back here at RPA and Intelligent Automation Live. So wherever you are in the world, thank you for joining us. Thank you for enriching our discussions. Our engagement has been terrific throughout this conference because of you. Many of you are leading experts in these areas in your own organizations. And we need your leadership. Society needs your leadership to improve and innovate the way we work and the way we live. So we're grateful for your participation. Connect with us on LinkedIn. There's a post about this conference. Please extend your gratitude to the people who make this conference happen, to the support, to the speakers, to the conference sponsors, and everybody who does the production for the conference as well. And you can ask questions, you can engage on that LinkedIn post, and certainly you can find out what's coming up next by being engaged on that community. So thank you, wherever you are in the world. Have a great rest of your day. Have a wonderful weekend, and we'll continue to move on with our journey of greatness and having you with us in the days and weeks ahead. Thank you. Great rest of the day for everyone.